Good morning, my friends. I hope you're all doing very well. Today we're going to be continuing in the laws of idol worship. We're going to be learning chapter 9. And over here the Rambam is going to be explaining us, continuing on from yesterday, of the certain things that we're not allowed to have pleasure from any idol worship. And we're going to be learning about various interactions and various things that we might be deriving pleasure from things that are connected to idol worship, and therefore we're not allowed to do them. So the Rambam begins the chapter by telling us that before a holiday of idol worships, I guess a pagan holiday, we are not allowed to be interacting and giving stuff or taking stuff from idol worshippers, because these are things that are going to be used, so to speak, during their holiday. So, for instance, if we're going to be doing business with an idol worshipper and going to be selling him a certain item of food that is going to last beyond 3 days, something which is not expirable that day or the next day, so then we're not allowed to do that, because we should not be supporting their idol worship. And similarly, to give them a loan, so on and so forth. And if it's within 3 days and a person did it, although they were not allowed to, so then he's still allowed to derive pleasure from it. But if it was actually on the day of their holiday, so then that would not be allowed to have any pleasure from it, and it's something which we're not allowed to do. And now, what about if we're talking just a regular non-Jew that we know that they are not serving idols? So then it's obviously totally fine. But if there is a reason to think that this person is serving idols, so then we have to be careful and to make sure that they are not. And so if someone gives a present, let's say, there's a non-Jew who gives a person a gift, and it's right before a holiday of an idol worshipping holiday. So if we know for a fact that he's not an idol worshiper, so then everything is good. But if not, so then that would be an issue. And even also if it's a long holiday, so for the whole duration of that holiday, we would not be allowed to give them gifts or take gifts from them, because we don't want to be involved with the idol worshipping. The Rambam says that the Canaanites are idol worshippers, and Sunday is their festival. And therefore, in Israel, it would not be the Canaanites who were in the land of Israel. They don't actually exist today, but their holiday and festivals were on Sunday, so therefore Thursday, Friday, Shabbat, 3 days before, we would not be allowed to do business with them, etc. Because it would be supporting their festival of that Sunday. Similarly, if there's a person and a certain idol worshiper, an individual who is going to be he's celebrating a certain specialty because it's the day that it's his birthday, or something like that, or it's the day that the Rambam says he making a party for his son or something like that, so then that day would not be that day. Since he's an idol worshiper, so we're going to understand that even though he's doing it for a personal reason, but it's going to be involving idol worship, and therefore we should not support, so to speak, that party. But that's only regarding to that day for the purpose of that party. Also, if a person has a business and he's selling things, and certain items that he's selling are things that are used by idol worshippers for serving their idol. So in that time, so if an idol worshipper comes into the store and wants to buy this item, and we know that he's an idol worshiper and he's going to be using it to serve an idol, so then we should not be selling that, because essentially we're going to be supporting that idol worship. Now, but if it was mixed, if you had, I guess, a bag which had various items inside it, and one of them is something which is able to be used for an idol worship, then it's not a problem, because we're not going to think that he's buying the whole thing only for that specific item. Similarly, an idol worshiper, we should not sell them dangerous things. If we're he says, like a lion or a bear or weapons, unless we're living amongst idol worshippers in a place, in a city or a land, country, where we're living amongst idol worshippers, and in order to keep us safe, the government has to keep us safe. So although they are idol worshippers, but still we would be allowed to sell them weapons. If there's a Jewish company or a Jewish person that is selling weapons, he would be allowed to sell it to the government, to the king of that place, so that they would watch over the city and keep us all safe. If a person is going on a trip and is coming by a city of idol worship, so then he should refrain from going through the city, but rather go on a way which is not going through the actual city. If a person is working in construction, so then he would not be allowed to be hired to build a dome or like a building which is for idol worship, where they're going to be placing an idol within that place. But if we're talking about the courtyard or the outer parts of it, so then that would be allowed. Now, if we're living within a city of idol worship, and there are certain stores that have idols within them, and we see that they were decorated in honor of a certain idol worship, so then we should refrain from buying in that store. But if they're not decorated with idol worship, so then that would be okay. And similarly, we should not buy in a store that is for the purpose of idol worship, because then we're going to be supporting idol worship. The money, the money which is being, that money which you're going to be paying is going to go directly to false gods, so to speak, to support that. Similarly, a person who sells a house or a building for idol worship, so then that money would now in turn not be allowed to have any pleasure from it, because you're pleasuring from money which is coming from idol worship. So therefore, that money should be thrown into the Dead Sea, the Rambam says. But if they forced the person to sell the house to them, so then that would be okay. Similarly, if there is a big commercial fair where they're selling all different types of livestock, servants, fields, vineyards, so to speak, so then the Rambam actually says that you are allowed to buy from them, because it's saving one's property from them. In other words, this servant or whoever is coming, you're saving them from their hands, so to speak. Or if it's a house or a field, so then that would be allowed. But that's only if you're buying it from the owner of the house. But if you're only buying it from a broker, so then that brokerage money, because it's a pagan and it's an idol worshipping fair, so that brokerage, that extra money is going to go in to support the idol worship, so then you would not be allowed to do that. Now, if you have as a person who is an idol worshipper and he makes a party for one of his children, we should not have enjoyment from that party. Even if a person will say, well, I'll bring my own kosher food and I'll sit there, would not be allowed. Because, as the verse says, and he shall call to you, and you shall eat from his slaughter, and you shall choose from his daughters for your sons. His daughters will stray after their gods, and they will lead your sons astray after these gods. So the Torah clearly spells out, because of the idea of intermarriage, so therefore we should not be involved with idol worshippers at their personal parties. So that's an interesting idea, specifically in regards to idol worshippers, but it's a very interesting concept. And the Rambam finishes off this chapter by saying that, again, because we don't want to be involved with idol worshipping, so therefore a Jewish woman who is like a wet nurse, so she should not be nursing a child of an idolater, because essentially she's raising a person who's going to be an idolater. And to be a midwife, so then she's allowed to do it for a fee, so that there should not be any strife and hate and so on. But and over here the Rambam finishes off the chapter by saying that when there is a fair and there are people buying and selling things at this fair, which is for idol worship, so then if they're going to the fair, so then we're not allowed to buy from them. But if they're coming from the fair, so then it would be permitted, because now they have finished at the fair and they're going back home. But when they're going to the fair, they're taking your items and they're going to be selling them over there for idol worship, so then that would not be allowed. If we're talking about a Jewish person who is an idolater, so then it would not be allowed, whether he is going or coming back. And that's pretty much the idea of the chapter of Rambam of today, where we continue to learn about the various forms of things that we're not allowed to have pleasure from because they are supporting idol worship. And this is, it's if you look at it at its core, and we're learning these chapters over here, we've already learned 9 chapters of the laws of idol worship. We're really seeing that in Jewish law, the idea of serving another God is so stringent that we're not allowed to get close, even at the slightest amount, to it. And therefore we're not allowed to have any pleasure from it, or not to enhance it in any shape or form. It's something which we have to despise and push away entirely, and because we only believe in one God. And anything which would strengthen and enhance and push up, so to speak, any other false god is something which we should keep as far away as possible under any circumstance. And that's why we have all these laws telling us the various cases and circumstances and things which we will bump into throughout our life, how we should deal with them, every place in its own scenario, what is allowed and what is not allowed. So with that, we complete the chapter for today. God willing, we will continue tomorrow, another couple chapters, and we will complete the set of laws of idol worship. Have a very good one.